Hi, my name is Bob and I'm back here in beautiful British Columbia on a gorgeous fall day. And in the next few minutes I'm going to show you how to build one of these truck toppers. You call it a topper, a capper, a canopy, whatever. But the nice thing about this is it's something you can build if you've got a few good hand tools and a little bit of common sense about woodworking. I think the project cost me, just under 500 bucks, and I'm quite happy with what I've got because it's really sturdy and it's waterproof, weatherproof, and if I were to go out and buy one on the market, they were talking 2,000 bucks plus to have one built. And for under 500 Canadian, that's like what, 20 bucks US. So go for it. You can do this thing, and just take your time and use some common sense, and you'll have yourself a really nice canopy in the end. So when I started out with this project, I took a half a sheet of plywood and put that up against the back of my truck. Oh, by the way, that's my other ride there. That's my 1971 Morris Minor Traveler. Restored it all, brought it over from England, and no, it's not for sale. So basically what you're seeing now is the beginnings of the framework here, and I fashioned all of this out of 1.5 sheets of 3/4 inch plywood, good one side. And just show you some of the details. I laid the plywood up against the cab here, took a carpenter's pencil on an extension and just traced the outline of the cab onto the plywood so I know what the shape was going to be, and then modified that a little bit because I'm going to be putting thin plywood over this, so obviously I can't bend around corners, so there's got to be some straight edges here and there. The window obviously should fairly well match what's inside there. I've ordered a piece of 4 foot by 3 foot Lexan, which I'm going to use for the windows. The Lexan is preferable to plexiglass because it doesn't shatter or break. Tough stuff. So some of the details here. Basically, one thing you want to do is when you're cutting your side pieces here, angle those. In this case, it was 22.5 degrees here, so that when you're laying the plywood over them, everything's going to be flush and you won't have any gaps there. I'm going to put the sealing foam rubber tape underneath this eventually so that it'll pull down nicely, but you get the idea. The center strut here I doubled up with the 3/4 inch because this is where my roof rack is going to be mounted, and I needed the extra strength because I'm carrying a lot of weight time over some pretty rough roads in the Baja. So this is a structural member that can't be cheapened on. So I went with a full 1.5 inches with the laminated 2 pieces here that make this thing fit together nicely. And the back here, you can see I've got this part cut out for the back window. I'm gonna take a router and inset this whole edge here about 1/2 inch so that I can inset my Lexan to that. Same thing for the front window, though the front window will be secured and this one will be hinged. So we're kind of at that stage now where I'm going to start fitting plywood onto this on the outside. I've got some 3/16 birch plywood that's going to be sitting on the surface here. I still haven't figured what I'm going to do as far as the finish on it goes. I may put some sequins on there or leave it natural, but there's going to be fiberglass put over the joint at the top and the front here just to strengthen that and to seal it. And by the way, I'm using Gorilla Glue or the polyurethane glue here at all of my structural places. You can see it foaming out there. This stuff is great, really tough glue, and of course it's weatherproof and waterproof. So we'll update you with the next part here once I get the plywood ready to go, and we'll go from there. Okay, so we've added a few things here to make the bottom of it all leveled out. Got some brackets on the bottom here that are another piece of plywood there just to flesh this whole thing out. And then I've put L brackets on the inside here to make sure that everything, and these are actually bolted in, they're not just screwed in, because these things go through a lot of vibration. So L brackets just to through bolt everything. And now we're going to go ahead and cut the sides and get those installed. All right, so I've cut and attached this this first side here, and I've been careful to line it up with the square edge in the bottom, particularly in the center rib, because it's kind of free floating and you want it to sit square on your truck bed there, up along the sides. And I've glued it thoroughly and screwed it somewhat, and I'm going to leave a little overhang in the back here, which I'm going to clean up with a router once I get everything together here. So we'll leave that for later and just give ourselves a little extra. Okay, so I've got both sides on, and I've put in brackets here. I'm putting on a roof rack, and what I've done is basically made my own gutter here with a Yakima quick rail system, and on the inside I've reinforced the back of it with a piece of 1/2-inch birch, or you can use any hardwood or plywood, but and then you know, a fat piece of washer or steel to back that up as well, so that you've got some really good solid holding power for your roof rack system. And that'll take the stress off the outside of that paneling and transfer it all over to the blocks, and they're of course glued and screwed on as well. All right, well, I decided to go ahead and put some reinforcements along the top edge of the sides just to make those straight and reinforced, because there's actually not going to be any bond between them and the top except for fiberglass. So this way they're going to stay rigid and give us a nice surface to keep it straight, and then when we put the top on, we'll actually have a little something that we can screw down into, and that should help align everything up quite nicely, and it just gives it one more place to make it more rigid. The whole idea of this process is to basically make this a unibody canopy, so that everything ties together and the strength is in the whole unit itself and not just the framework. So it looks like once the glue dries here, we can go ahead and put the top piece on, and yeah, we'll be a lot closer. Okay, well, we're back, and let everything set up overnight. That was gluing, and now I've just installed the roof panel, and you can see it's clamped and then screwed. I've put glue all the way around the perimeter where the edges are meeting here, and this this polyurethane glue is great because of course it swells up when it you dampen the wood a little bit, and then it swells up and fills in a lot of gaps like that. So this is going to make a really nice bond all the way around, and give me some pretty good adhesion. On the back here, you can see I've left a little overlap because I'm going to put some vents in the top here, and I just want those vents to be sheltered from rain and stuff coming directly in. So I left a little bit of a lip overhanging that. And just to show you everything, all the screws that I put in here, I countersink and then drive in, and I'm using decking screws here. One, because they're nice screw for this type of capacity, and also they've got kind of a nice brass color to them, even though they're not brass, but they're whatever they put on here. These will look really nicely with the finish that I'm going to put on here as well, instead of a bright shiny silvery thing. So okay, well, here we are with the top roof panel attached, and what I've been doing is going around with the surfaces that I can and hitting them with a router, so I get that nice curved edge on there. And for the sides here, I've had to do the belt sander because the router won't follow this angled contour, unfortunately. At least my old router won't. But it does do a pretty nice job on the rest of the thing. So we're gonna get this all cleaned up, and then I'm gonna stick some fiberglass along these top edges so that we've got a really good bond between the top and the sides, and it's sealed. Okay, well, we're here the next day, and we've got a layer of fiberglass on, and that coat was sanded afterwards, and then I've just put another coat of resin on top of that. So I'm going to go ahead and do the final sanding on that, just to smooth it down, and at the same time give it a bit of texture for the final finish to adhere to. Okay, so we've got all the edges glassed and sanded and ready for finish. And what I'm doing now is cutting in some 2.5 inch holes here for a little mini vent, which I'm putting 2 of in the back and 2 in the front. And the ones in the front I've got set so that when the cap is sitting on top of the truck, my little overhang here, I can put a pool noodle right across the whole top of that piece there and seal those things off completely from the weather. So if I'm in driving rain, or it's winter time and I really don't need the ventilation, the pool noodle will be there. The pool noodle does 2 things. It keeps the snow from going down in between the canopy and the truck, so it doesn't accumulate down along the window here. And it also just kind of gives it a little bit more aerodynamics and keeps the wind from blowing in there. But you can pull the pool noodle out and have your vents open, and it'll keep things nice and cool in there as you're driving along or when you're sitting still. Okay, so I've picked up a 3/8 inset router blade, and basically just tracing around the perimeter of both of the windows here so I can set in the Lexan. And there's the router there. Check out the bit. It's just kind of a square bit like that. So I picked Lexan because Lexan has got a 5-year guarantee against breakage, and it's super tough stuff. So you can smash it and it's not going to break, basically. It's a new day, and our first coat of varnish has dried nicely, and I've been cutting the Lexan here while things are warming up so I can put my second and third coats on. And basically what I've done is I got a 3x4 piece of Lexan, and I cut the surroundings out by laying the Lexan up against the opening here, going inside, tracing around the perimeter of it, and then making it 3/8 of an inch larger than that, cutting that with the jigsaw. So what I'm doing here now, I'm just doing my final fit on this, and as I've clamped it and cut it on the one side, and I can just mark it on the outside here and go ahead and cut that with the jigsaw, and it will be done. Okay, welcome back, and we have now completed all the varnishing on here. We've got 3 coats of spar varnish on, and it's lightly sanded in between coats. I've done all of the routering for the window in the front here, and have placed the window in. And I'm using a clear sealant here called Lexol, which is really nice stuff, and I put a bead of that around the inside, and then put a bead around the outside as well. So I set the Lexan in place, and then well, actually I put the bead around first, put the Lexan in place, and then put another bead on the outside. So I've got it sealed on both sides quite nicely, and it'll adhere quite nicely too. Okay, so we've got our cap seal on now, and the main thing you've got to do is just follow the instructions. Obviously this is a 3-channel one, which gives you a little bit more protection, and you've got to cut a V out of the corner so you can keep it continuous. Don't have any break in the outer bead there, which is important. And otherwise, you can see we're all installed around here. And so now I'm just gonna flip it back over, and we'll start work on installing the back window. Okay, we're getting close here. We've installed the vents in the back with a little bit of sealer inside, and I have trimmed the Lexan around, so we've got a nice tight fit. I'm going to put some foam strip underneath it for sealing, and I've installed a pair of hinges. These are screwed into the wood part here and pop riveted onto the Lexan itself with some washers backing it up, so nice and sturdy there. And now we're going to go ahead and install the T-handles for the locking system, and we'll be pretty darn close. Okay, fun stuff. We got her mounted, and I'll show you some of the details here. I've got the clamps inside here, and I've doubled up on the wood surface there with a piece of hardwood, just so that it's got a lot of extra surface to grab on there, and it's kind of spreading that pressure out over the plywood, so it's not just that one piece of plywood. And that's same thing up front here. These are some little gas-filled struts that I got from Amazon. These look like they're, I think they're about a 6-inch stroke on these. And I've mounted one side with some good glue and screws. That's going to hold that baby pretty darn well. And what I'm doing up here now is I'm doing some trial fits with my vice grips, just to make sure that when I close this thing, that I've not completely collapsed the cylinder down here, but I've still got a little bit of free play there, so it's just not hitting. And what you're looking for is basically something that's going to clear the outside here where it's mounted, so that it doesn't hit on the framework as it comes down. So just try a couple of different settings with a couple of pairs of vice grips, and you'll find something that works eventually. The other thing that I put on here was the handle system with the lock, and I had to do some modifications on those to make them work, mainly because they were designed for a piece of like 1/2-inch material or 3/4-inch material, and so I had to saw a few things off. But basically what you want to do is drill them through so that they're secure through the Lexan here, and this little piece here swings out, locks in that position, swings back to clear. Okay, so I'm going to get these struts finished and secured, and then we're just going to need a sealing strip, and we can mount up the roof rack and go. Hey, well, I'm down in the Baja now, so this is a chance to look at the canopy and just see how it survived for the last 6,000 kilometers. And I've been down here about 6 weeks now, taking it over some really rugged roads, and that's where some of the nicest places are, so you just got to go there to get there. Let's take a look at some of the things that I would change, and let's take a look at things that I like about what's happened here. Okay, so what I found was that our plywood here, the 3/16 birch plywood, was probably not up to scratch as far as holding up to outdoor use without a lot of care. What I would do next time is I would put a layer of fiberglass at the bottom here and wrap it right around where the bottom plate meets the side piece of plywood, and that would seal that up quite nicely. What I've had to do here is basically lift the whole topper up and put a layer of Gorilla tape underneath here. There's some clear tape that goes right over the gasket and overlaps to the top, and then I've overlapped that with another piece of the black Gorilla gasket and Gorilla tape, and that hopefully will do the job of sealing that up nicely and make it so that it's going to be waterproof down there. Next time around, I would take this window out further and I would move it right out to the edge of the tailgate here. I don't think you're going to compromise any strength, but it would entail getting a 4.5 foot piece of Lexan to do that with. So that would be something that I would do next time around. Otherwise, just a few little details like putting in stainless screws instead of just plated screws into the wood up there on the hinges, and looks like the hinges themselves, even though they're nickel plated, are starting to show some corrosion too. So if you're in a high salt condition where there's a lot of salt mist in the air here in the mornings, at night, it does corrode things pretty quickly. So that would be one suggestion I would make. Otherwise, this part has worked out really well, and this has carried my heavy kayak over some very rugged roads here in the Baja. I mean, some of these roads you wouldn't believe. So the fact that it's been able to do that, hasn't shaken itself apart yet, and everything seems to be sturdy and hanging on there quite well, I'm quite pleased with all that part. So yeah, if you go ahead and make one of these, let me know how you're doing, and send some pictures, and I'd love to see your completed project too. And you can follow me here and stay up to dated for more projects from Bob's Your Uncle.